Welcome to Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Week 1 is in the books. The Seahawks have a win, and the Mike Macdonald era has started with a win. But I mean, that barely tells the whole story. And I mentioned on Twitter that it feels, Robbie, like we have almost like a whole season worth of things to talk about after that game. Some extreme highs, some extreme lows. A half of football that made me wonder whether Ryan Grubb is the right man for the job. And then the end of the game thinking, well, maybe he is because he turned it all around. And then, just when you think the Seahawks are going to blow the Broncos out, it ends up being a bit close, uncomfortably close at the end. But they've won. We're going to get into everything. If you want to make a point, this is how we roll. Send us a super chat and we'll put it up on the screen. So if you've got a point you want to make about the game, if you've got a question, or if you just want to support the channel, then send your super chats in because we always appreciate those. Keep those coming in. Right then, Robbie, I've got a lot to say. I've no doubt you have as well. But what is your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, lots to improve on. Fun to have football back, even if we would have lost that game. I had to remind myself early on in the game as I was like pissed that we had given up 2 safeties, and I was like, I don't know if that's ever happened. I just remind myself that new regime, new they haven't played a lot. This is just a brand new season. We have a long season ahead of us. So I had to remind myself, like, hey, even there's a lot to improve on, a lot of things you can go better. And the fact matters is it's hard to win at the NFL, and they came out and got a win today, and I'm happy with it. That offensive line, man, it's questionable. That is, I wasn't, the last time you and I had talked, and Adam was here with us, and guys were going on and on about the offensive line. And I was like, I'm not that worried about it, well, today that proved wrong. I'm now legit concerned about that offensive line. That was a pretty terrible performance. Hopefully they can improve as the season goes on. Lots of things to improve on, but I'll take it. Pretty excited to have a win.
Let's just start. I was going to say let's start with the big positive, which is the defense. But I think that the offensive line is going to be the thing that most people talk about off the back of this game, Robbie. So let's just get into that right off the bat. I mean, I don't think I've seen an offensive line performance as bad as that in the first half. And we've seen some bad ones. You think of the one that always kind of comes to mind, and look, I'm sure there are others. We've not seen great offensive lines in Seattle over the last... Go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl year. That's the last time the Seahawks had a great line. But the game that I keep coming back to is can you remember when they when they beat the St. Louis Rams in 2013? So the Super Bowl winning season, and it was Monday Night Football, and we all expected the Seahawks to go down to St. Louis and just handle their business. And the fact that the O-line couldn't block anybody just completely shut down the offense for the whole game, and they needed a last gasp red zone stop to win that game and escape. That is the game that always reminds me of what an offensive line can do for a team. It can completely destabilize and shut down a team when it's really bad, Robbie, in a way that the only other, I think, position group that can do that is quarterback. Like if a quarterback has a terrible game, it can ruin everything. If an offensive line has a terrible game, it can ruin everything. I get it. Like a D line can do poor run defense, but then there's ways and means of working around that. I think that was even worse, that first half, than that St. Louis game, because it just destroyed everything. Like it just to have 2 safeties in a half is unthinkable. But then the other side of it, Robbie, is after half time, they turned to the run. They run blocked well. They did need Ken Walker to bounce outside a lot and to almost get away from the offensive line to sort of capitalize on perhaps some of his best runs. But they did make some movement up the middle as well. They created some holes for Ken Walker. I'm really worried, by the way, and this is another thing we have to talk about, that he did not emerge after he left the field kind of like, doing all this and sort of suggesting that he tweaked something. And we didn't see him again, which worries me a little bit. But the O-line did sort it out, and Grubb sorted it out, and they showed, Robbie, that they can run the ball with this offensive line. So there's a massive negative in the first half. There's a much better second half performance from the line. And after all of that, Robbie, I don't know what to think about it. I don't know whether they can build off this and maybe just take baby steps and improve. I don't know if they've got to go out and sign a couple of offensive linemen this week. There's still a few veterans out there. I don't know what to think of this. What do you think right now?
Well, I think they can build off this. I mean, I think it'd be silly to say they can't build off this, but I do think I just saw someone say John's on the phone already. I actually agree with that. I think he's probably on the phone looking at some right tackles and some guards and um but they did play better in that second half. Again, it's a long season. There's a lot of games left to be played, so there's no reason why they can't turn around on the offensive side, but this defense is going to keep us in games. I mean, I thought they were phenomenal. It was, and I'm actually a little bummed I didn't start with that because the defense played so well. I mean, the offense didn't help them out at all in that first half. I mean, even at halftime, they were like, oh yeah, we've been playing on their side the whole time, and they just didn't give them any chances. So the fact that this defense kept us in the game, and it reminded me kind of like if I'm not knocking Peter and like that, but it's like I feel like if it was any other year, like a normal past years, I feel like we wouldn't have adjusted well, and they would have scored touchdowns, and we could have easily been down, 21-5 or 21-3 really, really quickly, and we didn't. So really happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll do a big bit on the defense because, as you rightly say, it was excellent. I do think they benefited from playing the Bo Nix led Broncos, but at the same time, I think there was a lot of encouragement from that. I want to bring this up though, Robbie. If you'll just give me a second to share the screen, because I agree with you. There is a chance to work things out. Can you see that? So there is a chance to.
Yeah.
There's always a chance to work things out. But George Fant went off with an injury that looked as if it was going to be serious. And the guards both played appallingly. And I don't think you can give up on Laken Tomlinson and Anthony Bradford after one game, although Christian Haynes provides a solution as an alternative at right guard. There's not really anybody at left guard. But Stone Forsyth played right tackle. I'll be very interested if they either bring somebody in just to provide some depth there if Fant's out for a long time, or whether they just want to bring somebody in to improve. Now, these are the names there. Do any strike you? Because there's some experienced players. There's some experienced players who have not played right tackle, but you sense that, they possibly could. Do you go and throw a phone call out to Donovan Smith or David Bakhtiari and say, look, let's have a physical here. Let's see if can you come and play a bit of right tackle for us? Do you go back to Jason Peters, who you have a relationship with because he's been in Seattle before? Is DJ Humphries healthy enough? There are players on that list, Riley Reef, who've played right tackle. Is there anybody out there, Robbie? And I will scroll down and have a look at the guards as well after that performance today. Is there anybody there that you think, do you know what? I'd see if they've got anything left in the tank to try and improve that situation if Fant's going to be missing for a while.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys that you're mentioning, I'd give them a ring to see if they'd be interested playing. I mean, shoot, we've got a history with Dwayne Brown, but he's played left tackle. But I'd see if he's got anything left. Jason Peters, he's the guy who just doesn't age. I mean, he just keeps getting older, but keeps playing. And so, to see if he's got anything left. I mean, I don't know how long they're going to need someone. A lot of this depends on Abe Lucas and his ability to come back. So you're going to have to do something, though. I mean, Stone Forsyth was not the guy that to be playing right tackle for you long term. I just don't think that's who you're going to have. I think he's fine as a bridge and a backup for a little while, but you're going to need to bring someone in at least to spell him or even to replace him altogether.
If Peters is healthy enough to play, I think it'll be him. Because they've got that relationship, because he's been in before, I suspect that may well be a formality. And we know that he's prepared to come be on the practice squad and be elevated. So I suspect that maybe he will get the phone call there. But it does put a lot of pressure on him if he's going to start a lot of games. And it puts a lot of pressure on the Seahawks because who knows when Abe Lucas is going to be back. I know he can't play the first 4 games, but it may be longer than that. And then at guard, I mean, Tomlinson was so bad at times, it kind of makes you think, have you got to run through this list? But when you see that Phil Haynes, Robbie, who has been discarded by the Seahawks and not picked up by anybody else, is at the top of this list and is listed in some kind of order, it does not hold out much hope. I suspect that this is not an issue that is going to be solved by bringing somebody in at guard. It's going to have to be an issue solved by massively improving the positions. And maybe that means that you have to have a look at playing Christian Haynes at left guard. If Tomlinson, I think you give Tomlinson another game or two, Robbie, and if he doesn't improve, you've got to think about, can that rookie fill in at left guard? Because he did not play well today, but Bradford didn't play well either. He got a bit banged up earlier on, but that was a massive concern, wasn't it? That interior line, we've talked about it. It probably doesn't help that you've got a centre who's just getting back from a serious injury. What was his first game back? He's going to need to knock off some ring rust there. But the interior line was absolutely atrocious in that first half. It got better, but it was a massive worry in the first half, wasn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's got to get better. I mean, there's again early in the season, and as you just said, Connor Williams hasn't even gotten a chance to really play at all, and just practice a little bit. So these guys have no cohesion. They're not used to playing with each other yet. So this is something that it's going to take a little time for them to start gelling together. So I think the interior will get better, but I have no issues bringing someone in to kind of help compete and maybe turn on the juices a little bit to make them a little worried.
Yeah, I wonder if there'll be some workouts this week, even if it's just to sort of send a message to the players. We're going to bring some offensive linemen in to have a look at them, because that was not good enough.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But again, has to be said, much better second half. And I have
Absolutely.
Look, Robbie, I know it makes me sound very old-fashioned, and it's not the cool thing to say, but I am 40 years old now. I enjoy a brand of football that is defensively exceptional and beating the crap out of the opponent in the run game. And for that reason, Robbie, I enjoyed the second half.
All right, yeah, I agree. And listen, that was my other positive is, Ken Walker III is just an animal. Watching him run is fun. And I really like what they got in Charbonnet as well. I really like the running back duo there. I just think if they can keep pounding the rock and ultimately that helps Geno Smith out a ton, not having to rely on him the whole time. And, I think just getting a good run game going and just establishing that, forcing the defense to kind of suck down, and you can go over top, and we got the receivers to do it. So yeah, I really like it.
I think it's a way that they could play. I mean, I really hope that Ken Walker is okay. The way that he came off the field, my initial reaction was, I'm worried about that, because he was frustrated, and I was thinking in my head, please be frustrated because you think you've missed an opportunity to make a big play there, and it just hasn't worked out. And he went off the field, and I think someone said on the broadcast that they talked about a stomach issue, and I think he's had oblique problems, hasn't he? And this is the problem with Ken Walker. Ken Walker playing that way, Robbie, all I was thinking was, this guy could be the rushing leader this year. I was watching that second half. If they decide our line is this bad that we're going to have to rely and lean on the running game, that the way that Ken Walker is playing, the amount of talent that he has, he could be the rushing leader if they really commit and dedicate themselves to that. And if that thought is going to last essentially 3.5 quarters of football because he's got another injury, it's going to be so disappointing and frustrating, because I almost think they need him. I think Zach Charbonnet is a really good player, but if you are going to have a bad offensive line and rely on the run game, you need a star like Ken Walker. So the comments people are saying that Ken Walker has said he's okay, which means that somebody in the media has probably gone up to him and has said, "Are you all right?" And he said yes. So thank God. I'm not going to talk about it anymore, because if he says he's okay, that's fine by me. Okay. Can we talk about I think it's best, because look, let's just do the offense, and then let's get to the defense, because there's a bunch of things, Robbie, that I just loved about the defense, and I want to talk a lot about that. I don't want to go a bit on the defense, then come back to the offense, then go back to the defense. So I was really worried in that first half, because do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Steve Sarkisian taking the Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator job. Because I remember watching, it wasn't quite as bad in his first half when he was there, but he replaced, if you remember, Kyle Shanahan at Atlanta with Dan Quinn after they'd lost that Super Bowl. And it just didn't look anywhere near as good. And you just looked at it and thought, this is a really basic offense, and this is not going to work for Sark. And it didn't, and he had to go back to college. And when I was watching that, I thought, my God, they have absolutely no idea how to handle what the NFL brings. And it's okay that they're going to sort of try and muddle through this, but this is the NFL. Like, you are not going to have forgiving opponents in the future like Denver. You are going to have issues here. And it seemed to me like, okay, when you have that first drive and you notice there's pressure, like they didn't really seem to be quick to go to like plays that would mitigate the issue that you have up front. Like get your tight ends in there, bunch them up, mass protect, go to some simple runs, go to some passes that you know that you can lean on, your favorite passes from training camp. And they didn't. Like people were saying the bootleg thing for the first safety, Robbie, was a good play because it gets you away from the pocket, it gets you away from the O-line, but you're still asking the offensive lineman to engage in the end zone for a period of time, even if the quarterback is running away from the pocket. I didn't like that play call. I didn't want it in Gino's hands for very long. And I get that they then ran the ball for the second safety and they cocked that up as well. But that was more of an execution issue than a game plan issue for me. I didn't have an issue with the run. I thought that first one was an avoidable set. So I was a bit worried they're not going to that. They're not working this out. And then at half time, I'm already really concerned about Grubb. But I have to say, Robbie, by the end of the game, I'm thinking, I can't remember the last defensive coordinator who turned it around. And, to go from an offense that was just painfully embarrassing to watch in that first half to one that could at least run the ball, was violent, was brutal, was moving Denver off the ball, basically just dominated them and probably should have won running away. That probably should have been a 34 points to 13 type of game. It ended up being a 6-point game, but they just ran all over them. And I thought they played a bit safe at the end, which allowed Denver to get that one drive, which got them back into it. But they dominated them when they needed to. And now I think I'm more encouraged by the fact that they adjusted, Robbie, that they found answers to problems. And I'm fascinated to see if, one, they can start without calamity next week in New England, and two, whether this physical tone-setting brand of football can be a consistent feature. Because Carroll always used to talk about it, and it kind of only ever been fits and starts since Marchand left. If they can play like that most weeks, they're going to be a really tough team to play against.
Yeah, I thought the second half adjustment was, a huge turn. You could see, as you said, just how physical they were playing. Everything about it just seemed like a completely different team out there playing. So it was a welcome sight to see. And I think I had some of the same concerns, but I also had just trying to remind myself, like I said, this is a long season. It's the first game. They haven't really played all that well together or that much together yet. Being that he is a new NFL offensive coordinator, I guess I didn't really think about too much of comparing it to like Steve Sarkisian or anything like that. But in my head, I just thought, man, it just there's a lot to work on. But I see only positive going forward. I mean, and it probably would have been higher if there wasn't for that DK Metcalf hold, on that touchdown. So it would have been a lot higher. I'm really excited about this. It's been a long time since I've been this excited about a Seahawks football team.
What a catch by Tyler Lockett, by the way, to win the game. I mean, that is a huge play.
Huge.
That is a huge play because, quite aside from the fact it's an amazingly difficult catch to complete, he's well covered. The ball he's like pinned it against his knee or something, or his thigh, as he's going to the ground and retained possession of the football. If he doesn't do that, Robbie, it stops the clock. It gives Denver the ball back with ample time to have a chance to drive for a game-winning score, or at least to take the lead. It's a huge, huge play. And while, I've probably felt this guilt, I've been as guilty as this as anybody. We've all kind of said, well, DK Metcalf's going to get 1 million pass catches this year, and Jackson Smith and Jigba's going to have a revamped role. But today, Seattle's best receiver by an absolute mile was Tyler Lockett. He was the one making plays. He was the one who was clutch at the end. He was the one who just basically sent everybody a gentle reminder that he's still a really good football player. And he is possibly one of the most underrated players in his generation. I think this is no slight of him. I mean, he had Russell Wilson for a long period, but imagine if he'd played with, a Mahomes or somebody, you could potentially talking like a Hall of Fame career here. I mean, he is that talented. I think he's that talented. I think he's so good and deserves a lot more sort of widespread praise beyond Seattle. And that play that he made at the end there and that performance today on a day when Seattle's passing game was pretty crap, I think speaks to what an unbelievable player he is and a Seahawks legend.
Yeah, and I think he's even kind of underappreciated in Seattle. I mean, even here, like I remember during the offseason, I'm like, well, Tyler Lockett, he's good, but if we moved on with the salary, just not doesn't make a lot of sense. I was even in that mindset, but you just forget how good he really is sometimes. He's just, you know, I think a lot of times people get kind of frustrated with him just falling to the ground instead of trying to get yards after contact or yards after catch. And I think that's some of the things that people kind of look past. But I just think, man, 6 out of 7 targets today, 77 yards. I mean, and that catch at the end was, huge. And kudos for Gino for leading him that far too. I saw somebody post about that, but I mean, that was a heck of a throw to get him in that position as well, because you can't lead him much better than that.
Yeah, it's a hard game to sort of have an opinion on Geno Smith and his performance, because obviously the offensive line in the first half just wrecked everything. It's very hard to judge running backs, quarterbacks, any skill player when the O-line is that bad. In the second half, when the protection was a little bit better, it gave him that little bit more opportunity to make some completions. But that said, there were, I still think the interception, Robbie, in the second play of the game is a huge error. Like, I know he got hit, and people have said he got hit. I just thought that was it seemed to me like a quarterback that came out and was a bit amped up and was desperate to go and, throw it around and make some plays, and forced one really early, and it was atrocious. But then the run, the big touchdown run, turning on the Jets, running past the defender, to make a defender miss in the NFL is very difficult, and he did that. He looked like have you noticed, is it his cousin who's the freshman at Ohio State? I think it is, who's just running around everybody, and he's probably going to could even win the Boletnikoff as a freshman. Like, he's that good. Well, he kind of looked like him running away from that defender. You could see where the genes are strong in those two. So that was a really good play. Obviously, the Zach Charbonnet touchdown was a massive blown coverage, so it was a bit of a gift from Denver. But he did make some big throws. He did, as you said, lead Tyler Lockett on that key play. So some good, some bad, with the excuse of a crap O-line, Robbie. I just don't. I think it's kind of on to week 2, isn't it? Let's sort of see what he does next week, because he is. Look, whether people like it or not, I suspect if you are a Chiefs fan, you are probably spending a bit of reflecting on every game and how did Patrick Mahomes play. We're going to end up doing the same with the quarterback in Seattle, whoever it is. It's Geno Smith at the moment. And I don't really know. I have a definitive takeaway from that game, Robbie, other than, like I say, some good, some bad, but with the caveat of the O-line being a disgrace in the first half.
Yeah, and funny, the first 2 plays on offense, a sack and then an interception. I remember just thinking, oh shoot, here we go. But yeah, to turn it around, and give Gino all the credit, and the offensive line was pretty bad, but turning around the second half, and all things about Ryan Grubb, I'm just really happy to get a win and move on to week 2, as you said, because there's a lot of football to be played. And I was actually thinking about, when we were having the conversation a couple weeks ago about what our record would be. Remember questioning that, how we were like, 11 should be pretty easy, or at least 10. Then after that first half, I was like, yeah, man, 7 or 8 at this point. The defense will keep us in, but yeah, I still think we're going to turn around and get better and better as the season goes on.
Well, at half time, Robbie, I told my wife what had happened in the first half, and she said, "Well, at least they'll have a high draft pick." So that's
true.
That's where I was at half time. And you're right. It is a reality check in terms of some of those predictions. I just expected and assumed that, the offensive line is going to be a struggle, but they'll find a way around it better than what we saw today. And I think that's why I don't want to wish my life away, but I'm kind of ready to see the next game. Like, I want to see, okay, it's not unusual for a team to play badly in the first game of the season. There have been some absolute stinkers from the Seahawks, even when they've had good teams. And then you look around the league, Robbie, there's been a lot of really bad football played today. Teams have been blown out. Teams have been upset, like the Bengals losing to the Patriots, and I don't think they had a point at halftime. Like, there have been some teams, like it took the Bills forever to get going. They nearly lost at home to the Cardinals. Like, there are teams out there that you would expect to be better, and they haven't been today. So I think that's the thing. I want to see next week, when they've got a week now when Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb will take that offensive line to one side. They'll sort of determine what was good, what was bad, and come up with a plan for next week. It's going to be interesting to sort of see what happens there. So I'm not going to be too overreact to it. I also, Robbie, have been saying for the last month, the Seahawks are going to lose a game we expect them to win, this year, because it's an inexperienced staff. I think we saw a bit of that today. I don't think Ryan Grubb, if this was his 10th year in the NFL, would produce a half of football like that, because not many offensive coordinators do. But I think that inexperience maybe, and that sort of first time, it probably hurt Seattle, and they still found a way to win. I still think they're going to drop a game. We expect them to win at some point. And maybe today's evidence, they'll drop more than one. And I'm interested to see how they're going to play against a team that functions better on offense themselves, because that Bo Nix Denver team, apart from that drive at the end, were an absolute shambles. So that's going to be another big example for this team moving forward. But they've got to win today, and it's 1-0. I'm kind of with you, though. I made a prediction on Puck Sports last week of 11 wins, and at half-time, that felt absolutely preposterous. So at least the 1-0 now. Right, let's talk about the defense. Loads of positives there, Robbie.
Got quite a few super chats, though, if you want to jump into some of these first before we do that.
Okay. Well,
Just-
okay. I'll do it. Our editorial director has insisted we get into the super chat, so I will do that. Thank you for pointing that out, Robbie. I'd forgotten. So this from PGZ206. Where this defense come from? Love it. Yep. I think we both agree with that, Robbie. I think it was. I mean, look, I think I expected the defense to play well against Bo Nix and Denver, and especially with the talent Seattle's got. But it was good to see it, wasn't it? It was good to sort of see.
Yeah,
that level
it's nice to see them flying around the ball, wrapping up, tackling, just all around. Just seemed a lot better. And linebacker play, Dodson felt like he was everywhere. I was really happy with it.
This from Shaid. It says shaky start, but it's week 1 with a new playbook. Defense looks so nice, brings tears to my eyes. 1-0, go Hawks. Thank you for the super chats, guys. Got a few more. Mike says, not a great day for the Geno brothers, though. Poor job. Mike is a regular commenter in the comments and on the blog, and it's his thing to talk about the quarterback position a lot. What I would say, Mike, is we can't have a whole year of every time Geno doesn't play absolutely lights out, having this kind of reaction. He had some good today, he had some bad today, and the offensive line makes it very hard to judge Geno Smith. I mean, if he was playing behind, it's not that he's not, that the expectation can never be, we can't judge Geno Smith until he's got an elite offensive line. But you've also got to give him a competent offensive line or a vaguely competent offensive line to judge him as well. And they didn't have that today. I mean, it was a disgrace in the first half. So I as someone who is not a chest beating Geno Smith is elite, pay the man $1 million a minute person, I still think it's very, very hard to sort of pass comment on what he did today.
Mike also says that he put $100 on the Seahawks to win the division.
Did he?
Yeah, I just saw in the comments.
Well, I did put a little bit of money on the Seahawks to win the division, and I'm bloody regretting it. I mean, I think I had about 11 bets today. Just, nothing big. You just like touchdown, what you'd call a parlay, we'd call it accumulator, just like which teams did. I don't think any of them won. So if this is setting the tone, maybe it'll be a non-betting season for me. THB says guard play was so bad, hard to judge anything after that. I think everyone would go along with that. I almost read this as KJ Wright, but it's KJ Smith with $10. Thank you, KJ. Great win. What is the future of Lucas O-line? It's a mess without him. Lockett cementing Ring of Honor status, such a great player. Any hope of O-line? Hope Obi-Wan. I mean, if Obi-Wan Kenobi can block a defensive tackle, he's welcome to have a bash at guard for me. I think Lockett, he's right about Lockett with the Ring of Honor, Robbie. That's an absolute lock, isn't it? It's a lock that Lockett will be in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah, 100%.
And, I wish Abe Lucas was healthy. It's just, when you're out for that long, and you've got to be careful, haven't you, Robbie? We can't have him come back even at like 70%, 75%. He's got to come back when you feel there's a realistic chance he's not going to get injured again in that same knee. And even then, there's going to be a huge risk it happens. So they've got to be careful with him there. And that's why I think probably Jason Peters, that'd be if I was going to predict anything, I'd probably say Peters. Unless there's somebody that Huff and Grubb and Schneider think that's perfect for us. I mean, like perfect for the Seahawks offensive line based on what we saw today could be a scarecrow, quite frankly. Just someone who can stand in the way. This one from Jan. Thank you, Rob. An 8 a.m. lecture tomorrow is brutal. Go Hawks. Yeah, I feel your pain, Jan. As a fellow, I'm guessing you're in Europe by that name. Perhaps not. But if you are, it's already 1 o'clock in the morning here, so you will be late night. The super chat was in euros, so I'm guessing you are in Europe. So yeah, but you know what, Jan, we have to do it. We're addicted to this, and we will be staying up late for another 17 weeks, if not more. BY says, big plus for me was the tackling, huge improvement. We will definitely talk about that. And the defense comes up after the super chats. Big Mike says, support the site, win or lose, folks. Really appreciate you saying that, Mike. Big Mike is an amazing follower and supporter of both the blog and the channel. So really appreciate that, Mike. Thank you for the super chat and for those words. And Save the Geese with perhaps the most profound super chat we've had. Hungry for McDonald's, says Save the Geese. Well, you go and treat yourself to whatever your meal of choice is from McDonald's. Robbie, you a McDonald's man? Do you dabble?
I mean, I have it every once in a great while.
What would you have if you were having a McDonald's right now? What would you go for?
I really I like the breakfast if I'm gonna get much.
McDonald's breakfast, yes.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
You can't be a McDonald's breakfast. That was like a daily thing for me at university.
Yeah.
Especially after a night on the beer. Which is legal over here. You have to be 18 to drink. Right, keep the super chats coming. Get them sent in if you want to support the channel, or if you just want to make a point about the team, or if you have a question for either of us, and it can be about the draft or the game or anything else, or if you just want to say that you really hate the 49ers, you can do that as well. Send in a super chat. It is much appreciated. Right, defense, Robbie. Excellent performance. I wanted to start, though, with the two players who impressed me the most, and that was the two linebackers. Dotson and Baker, I thought were absolutely unbelievable. I thought Dotson was a 10 out of 10. I thought it was that good. And Baker, not far behind, not quite as impactful. I think that's maybe because plays didn't go his way, though. But then when he did have the fumble play, he covered the fumble, I think, didn't he? So I think a big day for both of those two. And I hate to say it, we all love Bobby Wagner. And I have time for Jordan Brooks. But I thought there was a night and day difference between anything we saw from Wagner and Brooks last year and what we saw today. And whether that's coaching or whether that's scheme or whether that is just a freshness and a bit more of a point to prove or whatever it is, I thought the two linebackers were unbelievable today, Robbie.
Yeah, and it really helps kind of justify some of the things that, well, I guess it justifies them when we were really questioning whether or not what we were doing at the linebacker position. Thought we were short on it, and to watch them both play today was phenomenal. I'm going to touch on another guy that another offseason signing that I really, really liked. Rayshon Jenkins feels like he was everywhere today. That guy, him and Dotson were all over the place. Really happy with both of them and the way they played. Just overall, the defense was phenomenal. They looked fast. They looked, hungry. They were attacking the football. Whoever had the ball, they were gang tackling. It was really fun to see this brand of football again.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and Jordan Love as well. I definitely think Jordan Love is somebody who warrants a mention.
He looks way bit different than he did last year. I mean, I know it's only one game, but it just looked different, right?
He did look different.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Robbie, during the game. I thought he looks quicker. He looks more impactful. So I've been distracted by the super chat that's come in because Save the Geese. This is the first one. Hungry for McDonald's. He's now sent another one in. Said, sorry for the misspelling. Let's go Seahawks. And McDonald's defense looks legit. So we weren't even talking about McDonald's. He was talking. He's talking about Mike Macdonald. So appreciate the Save the Geese. But why not have a McDonald's anyway? You deserve it after a win. So yeah, thank you, Save the Geese. Also, fantastic username and avatar there, Ever Geese. I mean, that is a pretty serious looking geese. That geese looks like he could block somebody on an offensive line. So thank you for that, Save the Geese. Really appreciate it. Keep those super chats coming. I think the defensive line, I noticed a few comments on the blog during the game and then on social media as well. People saying they're not getting any pressure on Bo Nix. They're not having the kind of impact that I think a lot of people thought they would, that they would create lots of pressure, have a bunch of sacks. But I don't think that was ever going to happen in this game because Sean Payton, especially early on, was just saying, get the ball out, to Bo Nix and get out the pocket on the other plays. It was either ball comes out really quickly or run away from the pass rush and get yourself out of the pocket. So while they nullified the pass rush, they also pretty much nullified any kind of threat in the passing game because Bo Nix was constantly just dumping it off. I think he barely threw a pass beyond 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage for 3 quarters. And when he was getting out on the outside, it's very hard for a young quarterback to it's hard for quarterbacks to throw on the run anyway. I've just spent another weekend of watching these college quarterbacks trying to work out, who's NFL worthy and who's not. And throwing on the run is a difficult art. And when he was getting out of the pocket a lot, there wasn't much chance to make plays. So Sean Payton, yeah, great. You protected your quarterback from perhaps having a horrendous 5-interception, 8-sack day, but you also prevented him from having any opportunity to have a functioning offensive performance. There was just nothing. And I don't know why they didn't run the ball more, given the way they were playing that. But it's a long-winded way of saying, Robbie, that I don't think the pass rush was ever going to have the kind of impact that maybe people were hoping today because the way Denver played.
Yeah, and you just brought up them running the football. I feel like they tried. They were trying to get quick passes and then establish the run game, and we just shut it down really quick. They weren't getting anything on on the run game, and what did Bo Nix, by the way, just looked terrible today. He looked absolutely awful. But I mean, he was throwing 3-4 yard passes. I mean, they were quick. There was not a lot of time to put a lot of pressure. I don't really feel like they blitzed that often, anyways. They were playing zone majority of the game, and the couple times they did bring Witherspoon or whatever, it looked like they almost got him or came close to it, and there was not much you can do about the way the team is going to play. I think it'll be interesting when we start playing some of these pass heavy teams that are going to throw the ball a little bit further down the field.
I thought Bo Nix was awful, and I sent a message to my I have some Denver supporting friends, and I says, "Oh, you'll be saying Boo Nix by week 4," because I don't know how he ends up becoming the player that Denver wants him to become. Like, there's just very little there to think he's going to be a really good starting quarterback in the NFL. And it was watching him play was quite interesting because when you watched him at Oregon, I constantly thought, Robert, yeah, the production's there, because the offense dictates the production's there. Like, the Oregon Ducks currently have a quarterback who isn't playing very well and is not going to be drafted by all accounts, I don't think. And he's still getting yards and stats because the offense generates it. I mean, I can't remember who Oregon played. Like, it was basically like one of the smaller schools that you could possibly find to play as a week 1 opponent. And Oregon won the game, had a whole bunch of yards, and everyone came up and said Dylan Gabriel played like crap. That's because the offense produces statistics. And when you watch Bo Nix, it was hard to think, I see a difference maker who will go to the NFL and that will translate. And having seen him play with adversity at Auburn, the fear has to be that he reverts back to that when he gets to the NFL. And I think we saw that today. That was more like the Auburn Bo Nix. Now, maybe things settle down and it works out for him. That was his first game. It's on the road in Seattle. It's difficult. I thought it was really bad. But the lesson for that, the lesson from that, Robbie, for me, is that when we are watching quarterbacks, in terms of Seattle, whether you talk about first round or mid rounds or whatever, you've got to look for qualities that will make players either productive within your system or special. You've got to look for those special physical tools. You've got to look for the reasons why a player could become amazing. Now, if you go back and watch Russell Wilson tape now from when he was at Wisconsin, even the height and everything like that, there were definite examples of things that could make him very, very good in the NFL. And if you go through all of the quarterbacks, the Allens, the Burrows, the Mahomeses, the Herberts, you can see traits and aspects of their game. They're far from perfect in college, but you can see things that translate. And that is what we have to remember to look for when we're looking for quarterbacks. It's no good just looking at stats. It's no good just looking at players who've been in college forever or the teams who are playing for the winning teams. I suspect there's going to be a whole bunch of Cam Ward people this year, Robbie, saying that draft him in the first round because Miami's got a powder puff schedule and they are going to beat up pretty much everybody they play. I think their next toughest game is Florida State, and they're awful. They're already 0-2. So people are going to be bang. What we've got to do is you've got to watch Cam Ward and go, okay, I'm going to throw all of that out. What am I watching here? Does this translate to special? Now, there are quarterbacks in the college football right now who I've caught glimpses of who are not eligible for the next draft who could be special. But the ones who are eligible, Robbie, it's hit and miss. There are players with special qualities. There are players who I think are being a little bit overrated right now. But as a fan base and as a draft blog community, as we look towards what the Seahawks should look for if they're thinking of drafting, got to come back to what is special? What is special about this player? Because it's no good just drafting someone like Bo Nix who can execute a highly productive offense at a high standard, and then he gets to the NFL and looks like that. Because we don't want to end up with that, do we, Robbie? Especially not for the 12th overall pick.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel, Tommy's in here talking about a bunch of players from college that just had the right traits, and that's why people drafted him. But Nix doesn't really fit that bill. I wouldn't be surprised if they had, Jared Stidman or whatever, their backup quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up starting here, not after too long.
Well, that's the other thing I don't get, Robbie, is if you go to Jared Stidham, wow, that's a bad luck because you've given the rookie the start in week 1. Mm-hmm. And if you bench him and he's already 25 years old, wow, that's hard to come back from. But if you start Stidham and then go to Bo Nix, it's different. But I think Peyton's feeling the pressure here. He's paid $20 million a year and he came in to fix Russell Wilson. And after a year, he said, pay him to go away and I'll draft a quarterback in the top 15. And they're like, okay, Sean, you do what you think's best. And this is not working. And based on that Denver performance, Robbie, they could be picking easily in the top 5 next year. They looked terrible. So how do we contextualize that from a Seahawks perspective then, Robbie? Because the defense played very, very well, but look at what they were playing. So how much of that is amazing Seahawks and how much of it is Denver and Bo Nix were terrible?
I mean, it's tough to say, right? I mean, this is where but if you look at the next game, you're facing Jacoby Brissett, and so is that going to give you a better read on how the defense is going to play? No, maybe probably not. But they do have a better run defense or better run offense, and you got to imagine game 3. Miami is going to be a pretty tough. That might be a better read. You're playing, some. I guess it depends on if Tyreek Hill is playing or not. But, they have a lot of good offensive weapons, and you can kind of see where they're going to go from there. It's going to be tough. You can only play off what you're given as far as, the schedule goes and who you're playing, and can't change that. So I still think it was a hell of a defensive performance, regardless of who they're playing.
Yeah. I like the fact that the Patriots won today, by the way. I think if they'd have lost, let's say if what had have happened in against the Bengals today, and the Bengals, everyone expected, Bengals win handsomely, Robbie, I think that it kind of motivates the Patriots. I'm going to come back next week and we've got to be better. I think the fact that they've won a game now, it's quite hard to follow that up. Whereas the Seahawks have got a lot to work on this week. The Patriots will not have that many things that went wrong to work on, and the Seahawks will be able to find some things and exploit them. I think the other way around, the Seahawks are going to be spending a whole week trying to improve things. It might be a little bit harder for the Patriots to prepare for that. And they too have got a young coach who's going to be facing his first sort of after the first game in the same way that the Seahawks are. So it's going to be an interesting watch. But yeah, I still think the defense played very well, but I do wonder, what's it going to look like if they play a good team who's going to get their, they're going to get their stuff. Like we watched the Chiefs and the Ravens. Both teams have got decent defenses and they both gave up yards and points. And then same with the Packers and the Eagles, they gave up yards and points. And it's about when you're playing those big games, it's about, okay, we know the other team's going to get theirs. We've got to throw some punches back. We've got to get some points ourselves. Can the Seahawks do that? Can the offense help? Because the defense isn't going to be able to play at that unbelievable level with that weak opponent most weeks. Tariq Woolen played very, very well. I think we're not really going to mention that. I thought he's looking. I think it's great for him to get an interception week one, Robbie, because he's had a great camp and try and move things forward. And I do think that the pass rush, as time goes along, will improve. And I think there's a lot. I thought Leonard Williams he seemed to be quite active in there. So I think it's a good defensive performance, good for the Seahawks to move along, and hopefully, like some of the injuries and things are not too bad. But we'll await for news of that, especially the Ken Walker one.
Yeah, isn't it refreshing though to say, yeah, this guy had a good camp, and you see it translate into the regular season? I feel like it's been a long time since we've been able to say, yeah, you've heard about all these guys having great camps, but it just doesn't translate into the regular season. I feel like Tariq Woolen had a great camp. We may hear it the whole, all camp, and I've just been waiting to see, like, is that real? And it is, and it looks great. He looked great today. So again, playing against Bo Nix, so we'll see how he plays on against other teams. But yeah, just happy about that.
It's a good point to make. And Robbie, you and I are not going to spend every week that we come together and have a conversation sort of harping on about how great it is and what a relief it is that we've had some change in the coaching staff. But that defensive performance made me think, yeah. And I no doubt, and I'm fully embraced and prepared for some growing pains this year. We saw a lot of them today. But, in order to have change, you can't expect, okay, we're going to change everything and then everything's going to be great straight away. It's not going to be that way. And I do think Mike Macdonald is a very good defensive coach. It's good. I would rather the offense struggle a bit today than the defense. Because if it was the defense struggling, it's his baby, it's his responsibility. That would be a little bit concerning. But to see the head coach, the man at the top, produce a good defensive performance, and for the first time offensive coordinator in the NFL to have a few growing pains, I'd rather it be that way around than the other way around. So that was a good thing. We've got another super chat. Keep those coming in. We are going to do about another 13 minutes and then we'll call it a day. So if there's anything else that you want to say, or if you just want to help support the channel, get them in. Matt says, no one's talking about it, but Macdonald goes for 2 in the first half, but then only for 1 in the second half to put them up by 13. Could have been a tragedy if Denver got a late touchdown and won by 1. It's inexcusable. This is a really good point.
No, it really is.
It baffled me during the game, and I'm glad Matt's brought it up because I was going to forget. So thank you for the super chat, Matt, and thank you for the point. The 1 in the first half made no point, Robbie. Like people going, oh yeah, go up by 3. What, in the second quarter? Like there's so much football to be played. Have the free point that is open to you. I know that it's not a guarantee anymore, but just take the extra point and move forward. So you remove that point from the board by trying to go for 2. And then later on, why are you not going for 2 to make it a 7-point game? Like having the 6-point lead meant nothing. And if Tyler Lockett doesn't make that catch, Denver has a chance to drive to win rather than to tie or force them to go for the 2 to win. So whoever is helping him decide when to go for 2 needs to either be replaced or given a little bit of a kick up the arse and told, do not make those decisions again. And if it's Mike Macdonald, he needs to have a big old think about that. And if he does a show this week where there's a press conference, I really want somebody to say to him, why did you go for 2 in the first half and then not in the second half? Because it just made no sense, Robbie, on either occasion, his decision-making on the 2 points.
Yeah, I didn't get it at all. I was shocked. I kind of looked down for a second from the TV and looked back up, and I was like, "Wait, shit! They're going for 2? Why?" It made no sense. Yeah, and I'm gonna chalk that up to young coach overthinking it, doing things a little too early. That's what I'm gonna chalk it up to. Hopefully, he won't make those kind of mistakes again.
I'm happy to join you in chalking it down to that. I do hope that they learn from it as well, and I do think sometimes because we live in a world now where it is a constant debate, what do the analytics say? What should you do in these situations? Everyone wants to be aggressive as hell, like go for it on 4th down and go for 2 points and all of that. Like the game has changed. But you can overthink things sometimes. Sometimes just the simplest thing to do, especially in the second quarter, you've got a touchdown, just go kick the extra point, move forward. And then I would personally leave those sort of 2-point decisions to the second half. And just if you need it to extend a lead to a certain thing, or if you need to chase a game and you need to do that, just leave it for that. You get a 3-point, just take it. It would have been much more comfortable for all of us to sit there with a 7-point lead than a 6-point lead. If they just kick that extra point in the first half, and then in the second half, whether it's 5 or 6 points, it's neither here nor there, is it? Like just have the either the 5 or the 7. Like no need to have the 6. Somebody has sent a super chat in to correct me on the fact that I keep calling Jordan Love Julian Love and Julian Love Jordan Love. I mean, really, one of them has to change the name of me. Like this can't go on. Like it's not fair. If like there are players in the league. Like, if you noticed that the other Josh Allen has got sick of being known as the other Josh Allen and has inserted his mother's maiden name, like his name is now Josh, I think it's like Hines Allen or something like that, so that he's no longer the Jacksonville Josh Allen. He actually has a different name to the Buffalo Josh Allen. So maybe one of them could just call themselves Steve. Steve Allen.
Steve Allen.
Steve Love, Steve Love, Steve Love, not Steve Allen.
Yeah.
And they could call themselves Steve Allen if they want to, but it would just make it easier for me, and that's the most important thing. And this one from Hawks fan Mattman. I understand the caveat of playing against Bo Nix, but the defense playing well and getting confidence can only be a positive for future games. I agree with that, Matt. I think we both agree with that. I think, and I really appreciate the super chat. I just think that the one thing we will always do on this post-game stream, Robbie, is look at the pros, the cons, the positives, the negatives. We ain't ever going to come on here. My word, it was the most funniest thing I saw. I watched a Broncos live stream this week in the build-up to this game, and they were talking about playoffs. They were talking about how Bo Nix is going to do this, and Bo Nix is great, and how good it is to have a franchise quarterback, and Sean Payton was this, it was great, and the defense was great. Robbie, at one point, they pulled up the stats from last season and compared them to show how Denver were going to be able to attack Seattle's defense. And I was like, they've changed all of the staff. They've drafted a defensive tackle. They've changed everything. You can't look at last season, but they were convinced that they were going to have a great game because of that. I honestly will be looking on YouTube after this to see if they've done a post-game stream, because I'll probably watch about 3 Broncos post-game streams after this, because they were so bullish, Robbie. They were so convinced. There was the guy, and look, I know he was taking the piss, but there was the guy who was kind of trolling a little bit this week saying the Seahawks traded Russell Wilson away and the Broncos still got a franchise quarterback first. And I was talking up Bo Nix, and on that stream, they kept doing puns with Bo Nix's name, and they kept going, go Bo, go Bo. It's like, yeah, go back to Oregon, mate. You're crap. Like, I mean, honestly, it was awful watching it. And I need to go and see what these people are saying after the game, because that was so bad. And yeah, like I say, we will talk about the positives, talk about the negatives, we'll talk about the defense being amazing. But it'd be wrong for us if we're going to have a serious conversation about this, not to mention that Bo Nix was bloody awful in that game. And
Listen,
as were the Broncos.
You got to go on to those podcasts that you're listening to, and hopefully they have a live chat that you can get in, and you just post the video of you saying Broncos country, let's ride. Come on. Come on.
I'll dig it out in a minute. But I did reply saying, oh, my sweet summer children. And like, honestly, I feel like going back, there was only about 7 comments in the video, and I feel like there's not enough people watching that, obviously, for that to actually go back and warrant a second comment. But it does. I do feel like going, I told you so. Like, honestly, that is one of those occasions when I'm quite happy to go in and go, ha. Like, I just like, look, just be realistic. We're realistic. Maybe we weren't realistic. I predicted 11 wins. Okay, maybe we should be more realistic, but we like to be a bit more balanced than I think some of these other fan bases are. And that was hilarious. And I will be going on to either watch back some of what they're saying with a chuckle, or I will be going on to watch their latest stream and see what their reaction is to that. And as requested, Robbie,
and
here you go.
Get even sweeter next week if the Panthers somehow win next week. I'm telling you, it's good stuff.
Let's ride.
Let's ride.
Let's ride. And here's the other one.
Let's ride. It never gets old. It never gets old.
There was one other thing. If there's any other super chat, if anyone wants to stick in a late super chat with a question or a comment, then we'll come to it. But there is one other thing I wanted to mention in this game. I really enjoyed the moment when they used the replay assist to determine that the Seahawks did not rough the passer, because there are so many roughing the passer penalties these days that make me think that the NFL wants to ban defense. And it's really frustrating, and we shouldn't have to accept it as fans. Like, we invest a lot of money and a lot of energy in this, and I want to see defensive football. I want to see good quarterback play. I want to see big, explosive, exciting plays, but I also like to see people get hit and hit legally. And when quarterbacks get hit legally and then defenders get flagged anyway, I find it massively irritating. And if that had been a flag, Robbie, that would have been a flag last season, because I think they threw one and then the refs came together. It took no time at all. It took about 10, 15 seconds, maybe a tad longer than that, to realize it was not a flag. It was a safe play. And if that's going to be the way that the NFL operates this year with stuff like roughing the passer, Robbie, major thumbs up to the NFL, because that is going to be a huge improvement.
Yeah, I really like that. And there's quite a few things that they change, it seems like, yearly, that I'm not a huge fan of. And this one is just not one of those ones. I really enjoy that. I think that's going to really help the defense. I think they put that into play to help the defense specifically. And I think it's just, and it helped us right out the gate. I really like that. What was it, a couple of years ago, where you could challenge pass interference calls or whatever, and then they made it impossible for it to be overturned. And so I'm glad they're doing like this instead. This makes way more sense, and yeah, I really like it.
There is a couple of other super chats. There was something else I was going to mention. Oh yeah, the announcers. I was going to mention that, Robbie. We had a couple of DJ Metcalfs. I mean, I can't talk having called Julian Love Jordan Love, but they did have a couple of DJ Metcalfs. My favorite one was when the announcing team were praising the running back for Denver for it was the estimate, the former Notre Dame running back, for a good, strong, tough run up the middle, and the color commentator was saying, and he's got a poster up, and it was of, I don't know, who was it? The Detroit Barry Sanders or something, and they'd scribbled out Barry Sanders' name and put Jerome Bettis underneath it instead, because that's how he's got to run. He's got to be more like the bus, and it's like, okay, right, fine. And they were telling that story and saying what a great physical, tough run it was, and neither of them had realized that he fumbled the ball, and it was capped. Like, it took like the tight end flying in from nowhere to get it. I was like, that's not a good play. Like, okay, he's got the run, but he nearly coughed the ball up in the red zone there, or wherever it was. So the announcers had a bit of an adventurous game. They didn't seem to be following it quite as sharply as they perhaps could have done. But I think we might get a fair bit of this year, Robbie, because there's not that many. There's a few primetime games, aren't there? But I don't think the Seahawks are going to be a major sell when, you're competing in the NFC with like Dallas, with Dak's new contract, and the Niners are always going to be there, and the Eagles, aren't they? And the Green Bay might be less so now that Love's got an injury. But yeah, I noticed that kind of annoyed a few people while they were watching it.
Yeah, I think even I heard it a couple times. They mispronounced Lockett's last name. And it's just really frustrating. Yeah, I'm never a huge fan of the announcers anyways. I mean, if I can turn on the radio, I mean, back home when I lived in Seattle, I used to turn the radio on, listen to Rabel while I watched the game. It was way better.
Well, I did catch I can't remember which game it was. I think it was the Dolphins Jaguars that Kevin Harlan was doing. He's the best. I think he's the best. Like, Kevin Harlan's the best commentator. I wish he was doing like the big games. Like, there's just so much excitement in his voice. And I'll never forget that time he commentated when the Cat got on the field against San Francisco. Right. So we've got a couple of super chats. Matt says, was hoping to see a bit more from Byron Murphy. I wouldn't worry too much about that, Matt. As I mentioned, I think they made a point of getting away from the pass rush as quickly as they could with Bo Nix or getting the ball out so quickly. So I don't think this was ever going to be a game where the pass rush was going to have a big impact. In many ways, they kind of took it out of the game, Denver, at the expense of actually having a passing offense. And Save the Geese is back. Have a pint on me, Rob. Love all you do for the Seahawks, and your write-ups are some of the best. Thank you, Save the Geese. Appreciate that. Massively appreciate that. And all of the super chats that we have had. We are going to finish in a second. There's one last thing I wanted to do with Robbie before we finished. So if you have got any late super chats, you can still send them in. But I wanted to just get your thoughts, Robbie, on if there was anything else that stood out from week one so far. We've had the Chiefs beat the Ravens, the Eagles, Packers. They were quite entertaining games. The Eagles, Packers, I have no idea why that was in Brazil, but it was, and the Eagles won. The Saints, the Panthers are so bad. There were actually Seahawks fans who wanted Dave Canales to be in with a shot of the Seahawks gig, simply because of the fact he used to work with Carroll, and like, thank God they didn't do that. And David Tepper, the worst owner in the NFL, clearly, with what he's done to Carolina. Vikings beat the Giants. I think Daboll's on a short leash there. He's got to be. That's a terrible opening day for the Giants. Patriots shocked the Bengals, who were awful on offense. Steelers and the Falcons played out. I thought that was a miserable game of football, because the Steelers, Robbie, don't look good enough to be a contender, but they look like a good enough team to win games like that. And the Falcons just look like the Falcons have done for ever since they got to the Super Bowl with Matt Ryan and Kyle Shanahan and Dan Quinn. They just don't look good. And Raheem Morris is another one who a lot of people wanted in Seattle. I didn't see the appeal there. And I suspect that they have got 7-8 wins written all over them in Atlanta. Couple of interceptions for Kirk Cousins. Texans beat the Colts. Bills defeat the Cardinals. The Titans chucked that away like no tomorrow. And the Bears won, despite the fact that Shane Waldron had about 100 yards of offense for the Bears that day. Dolphins, Jaguars chucked that one away big time. Chargers beat the Raiders comfortably. Raiders going to have a horrible, horrible year. Cowboys destroyed the Browns. Deshaun Watson, what a mess. And the Bucs beat the Commanders. What is, if anything, stands out for you, Robbie, just to finish things off?
I thought the Cardinals played pretty well today against the Bills, even though they lost. And the Carolina Panthers will have the first pick in the draft. That stands out.
You're probably right already.
Bad. They're so bad.
Yeah, it's hard to think otherwise, isn't it?
They're just really, really bad.
You could probably, you could even say in these early stages, like you could easily imagine the Panthers being at 1. A lot of people thought the Patriots would be picking in the top 5, but after that, you kind of have to be in the Bengals. You think, no, they are going to win enough games to probably avoid all of that. So it's probably the Panthers. I would imagine the Broncos, Raiders. Who knows the Browns, what kind of season they're going to have. They just need to get out of that Deshaun Watson situation as soon as possible. A lot of people are saying Darrell Taylor got 2 sacks and a forced fumble, Robbie. That doesn't really bother me, that.
No.
It doesn't bother me.
Also saw DJ Dallas return a punt or a kickoff return.
Oh, he did. He got a touchdown, didn't he? Yes.
Yeah, he did. He got it. Yeah.
I was walking the dog. I had the headphones on with that. It was like, DJ Dallas has got 1 man to beat. I scored a touchdown. I was like,
yeah.
Why do these people never do any of this in Seattle?
Which
still be there.
I do have a question. Do you think D. Williams will be here next week?
He's only in the team, isn't he? For that job.
Yeah.
For the kick return, the punt return. If you can't do that properly, I think he will survive the week, but he can't have another one of those. Like the one, he's on a 1 strike count, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's had he's on a 2 strike count, and he's had the 1 strike. So now he needs to ensure that he does not do that again. But if that's the only reason you're in the team, you have to be Mr. Reliable.
Yep.
It'd be like having a quarterback who never throws a pass. Like every time he gets in the pocket, he refuses to throw it. Like it's no use. So you just have somebody else do that. So we will see. Anyway, Seahawks win. That's the positive thing. 1-0 on to New England. Robbie, I can't remember when the first year we did this, but I think it 2019, the first time we came together with a stream. If so, this means we've been doing this for 5 years now.
Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us again, and
Yeah,
I always enjoy coming together and really appreciate the time you give us and your thoughts. And the great thing is people are wondering, I'm going to do the streams and then write afterwards. And the reason I'm going to do that is so I can steal all of Robbie's opinions
Yeah.
to use them in the article
There you
when
go.
I write it after this.
You're
So there we
welcome.
go. Adam sent us a message, didn't he? Because he's not
He
with us
did.
today.
Yeah.
He sent us a message saying that he was pissed. So that he's
and
and
then
not in I don't mean an angry pissed. I mean a drunk pissed.
Yeah, I was gonna say he had a little too much to drink.
Yeah, he'd had a lot. Like the first message, there was lots of extra letters that were unnecessary in there because he just mashed the keys. But he got his point across. He was basically trying to tell us that Bo Nix isn't very good, which was something that we didn't have to go 5,000 miles, or I didn't have to go 5,000 miles to travel to see. But he, by all accounts, I think has had a very good time. So hopefully he will be back with us maybe next week or very, very soon. Robbie, great to have you with us. Thank you for all the super chats and for all of your support over the summer. And the subscriptions have gone really up. But I do know that 46% of the people who watch the videos on this channel are not subscribed. So imagine if you all just subscribed, then the numbers would be really good. And the message will get out to more people to check us out, whether it's the live stream or the videos we do during the week. I will have an article up soon discussing my thoughts on the game in written form. I have already prepared some notes for a draft piece this week. Discussing what I watched on the college football games today and yesterday. So check that out. silkstrapblog.com for all of that analysis. Like the video, leave a comment in the comment section because it helps with everything. Thank you again for your Patreons and for your super chats. Until next week, we'll see you then. Seahawks 1-0. Bye for now.